Hey there, I'm Christopher Dorabek. Welcome to Electrosoft's Thought Leadership Podcast Series. This is our second in our series of programs focused on informative insights on technology programs and discussions on the public sector's cybersecurity and IT modernization efforts. Joining us today for this second podcast, Dr. Sarbari Gupta. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Electrosoft, and Diana Proud-Madruga. She is Electrosoft's Senior Security Analyst. We're going to talk about the evolving security landscape and the threats out there in zero trust. Sarbari and Diana, thanks so much for doing this. Let me, Dr. Gupta, let me start with you and talk a little bit. We did this last time, but I think it's good to level set. Tell people a little bit about who Electrosoft is, what you guys do, and give us a little sense of the company.
Sure, Chris, thank you. Yes, Electrosoft, we've been around since 2001 serving federal government agencies. What we do is we provide IT professional services and solutions to our customers, but cybersecurity has been a major thrust for our company from the very get-go. In terms of customers, we serve both the DoD as well as the civilian sectors, including agencies such as the Defense Logistics Agency, Army, Department of Commerce, Treasury, GSA, NASA, many more. Other things about our company, we are a ISO 9001 and CMMI Level 3 certified shop, which means that we have mature management practices and we are pretty organized. And another interesting thing about us is that we are lucky to have quite a few of the best-in-class contract vehicles rather for the federal government, which means that we have access to and can respond to most of the opportunities that are released to these best-in-class contracts.
Well, I even understand. I mean, there's a lot of people in this space, right? How do you guys distinguish and make sure that you're different and better than the other guys, and actually talk about some of the awards? Because I know you guys won a bunch of awards recently. Tell us a little bit about those.
Okay, so which do I do first? Maybe let's talk about the awards since we're pretty proud of those. So yeah, we were fortunate to receive quite a few awards this year. Some of those have to do with our growth strategy, path. We've been growing pretty fast over the last few years. So we won a spot on the Washington Technology Fast 50 this year,
awesome.
Along with being on the Inc. 5000 list for, I think, the 7th time, and then the Washington Business Journal Fastest 75 Companies list. Another award that was very special, near and dear to our hearts, was the Washington Post 2020 Top Workplaces Award, which is very special because that's really based on votes submitted by our own employees, regarding how they appreciate working with us. We were also named finalists on a couple of GovCon categories for awards, distributed by the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce. And last but not the least, I think we ranked number 23 on the largest cybersecurity companies list for the Washington Business Journal for the DC area as well. So those are some of our recent awards, which we feel pretty good about.
It's awesome. It's great.
And you asked about what sets us apart. That's a very important question, of course, because within the federal government, there's so many companies. We all look alike, sound alike almost, So how do we distinguish or discriminate ourselves, from the others? So if you ask me, I mean, the biggest thing that distinguishes us from our peers is probably our company culture, which is based on our core values of integrity, customer service, and excellence, and also a deep focus on making sure we do what's right for our customers. And that's really served us well because, we have very high retention rates for our current contracts, or for our contracts historically in general. And also our customer survey or customer satisfaction ratings on the government CPAR system is very high. And we feel very proud of those achievements.
Awesome. Let's shift a little bit and talk about, because of course this year been so crazy, right? I mean, anything that can happen feels like it has. And talk a little bit about the landscape out there. Give us a little lay of the land. What are you seeing out there? And Sarbari, I'm going to start with you, and then bring Diana in here. But what are you seeing out there? How has it changed? Are you seeing different? I mean, we have more people working at home. Give us your sense as to what you're seeing.
Right. So of course, this has been a very, very strange year, if you want to call it that. And so what's changed from from the cybersecurity perspective, I would say, as you mentioned, it's everybody's pretty much working from home. Anybody who has an IT-oriented job has been working from home. And so it's a very different environment than what we were used to, which is you go to the office, you hook up your laptop or your computer to the corporate network, and then you start doing your work. So that was the corporate environment, in a sense, is kind of like a perimeter-based, trust model that we will talk about later. Whereas now, with each of us working from home and connecting through our home networks over the internet to the company servers and services, et cetera, or databases, it's very different from a security perspective. We need to have stronger authentication. So one of the things we've been doing as a company is to make sure that we have mandatory two-factor authentication set up for our email systems and various other ways we log on to the services that the company provides. So that's one thing for sure. And then also making sure that our company laptops and end user devices are patched regularly. Because when they were on the network, they were connected most of the time. But now that they're at home, many people, they just shut their computer down or disconnect it or whatever. And so it's very hard to make sure that these laptops are patched and as secure as we can make them. And what else? I guess the other thing is that people working from home generally have a different mindset often than when they're working from the office. So they are often more likely to fall for scams such as phishing attacks, right, and such, because they're kind of in a different mindset, if that makes sense.
You don't take it as seriously, do you? It's like when I'm at work, I'm in serious mode, and like I'm at home, and it can be, well, I mean, everyone says, oh, are you wearing pants these days on all our Zoom calls, for goodness sakes? It's a very different comfort level than you have. Right. Let me bring Diana in here. So Diana, it's so much, I mean, we've heard of killer hornets this year, for goodness sake. So, we're just waiting for anything, nothing surprises us anymore. Talk a little bit about what that means cybersecurity wise. Give us a sense.
Well, as Sarbari mentioned, because we're all working from home now, there's that issue. Something that was happening even before COVID hit is the explosion of the Internet of Things, where we've got all of these devices connecting in all different ways. People have their cars, their refrigerators, their microwaves, their washing machines. For gosh sake, my water heater has a Wi-Fi connection. And so this introduces so many potential attack vectors, and that creates lots and lots of opportunity for bad actors to get into the home network. And because we're now working from home, we're working remotely, that then once they crack the home network, they can easily get into the work network because of the kind of security that we've got going on. And that's part of what the push for zero trust is about.
You're racing ahead. Before we start,
that.
No, it's perfectly. You're leading us on that path. Let's talk a little bit about zero trust. Okay. And I think sometimes we throw around these words and zero trust and assume that everyone knows what we're talking about. I want to get both you guys to define what zero trust is and how it helps people and why it matters. And Sarbari, why don't you start? Because sort of when people are talking about zero trust, what are we really talking about?
It's really a different paradigm, I guess, from our traditional perimeter-based security models, where we assume that people who are within the perimeter are somewhat trusted, and we don't subject them to as many checks before we give them access to data or services. Whereas zero trust is kind of, as it sounds like, the end resources such as servers and databases and online services, they assume they have zero trust in the remote entity who's trying to get access. That's the starting out point. And so based on that, the remote entity has to establish their identity as well as their privilege to get access to that database or that service. So basically, it's zero trust before access is granted. And let's see, zero trust to start out with, and making sure that the remote entity proves who they are and why they ought to get access to that resource before giving them that access.
So Sarbari, it feels like this. Before we like had a wall, right? And good guys inside, bad guys outside, right? And the world we live in is more complex, and so we can't just create a wall, right? Is that the general take on?
Well, actually, the wall's been disappearing for for almost a decade now or more. Especially since most organizations, they've been gradually moving some of their IT resources as well as services to the cloud. That's been happening for many, many years now. So this false sense of the wall that we used to think we have, it really didn't even exist. So zero trust is something that has been developing over the years, the concepts, but it's becoming even more important because of this remote work environment. Every end entity, let's say staff member working within an organization, they're pretty much working, getting connected over the internet. And so there's no basis to assume that they're within some kind of a protected perimeter. So I think,
Yep. Diana, building a little bit on what Sarbari was saying. Go ahead. You got it.
Just to build on what Sarbari was saying, basically zero trust is a different way of thinking about and implementing network security, as was mentioned before. We talk about the perimeter, and that perimeter has been disappearing. I mean, the concept of zero trust was actually introduced back in 2004 through the Jericho Forum. They publicized this idea of the deperimeterization of security. And it has, because of the explosion of the Internet of Things, the explosion of artificial intelligence, working remotely, bring your own device, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, this need to bring security closer to the resources, closer to the item that actually needs protecting, is basically what zero trust is all about. Yeah. There is no more, in a lot of ways, security used to be kind of like a turtle. You have this really hard outer shell, but once you get through that shell, you got that gooey, nice, tasty inner that you can make turtle soup out of.
Sounds so yummy.
Well, it can be for the bad actors. Right. And zero trust is about making sure that it's more like a jawbreaker. You get through that one outer shell and, oh gee, there's still an equally hard shell inside that, and another hard shell inside that, and another hard shell inside that. So even if you get through 3 or 4 outer layers, you've still got to get through that next layer. And that's one of the guiding principles behind zero trust, is that even though you have network access, it does not mean that you now have access to every single asset, person, resource on that network. Yeah. You still have to go through this continuous authentication, this continuous re-identification and verification. I remember reading someplace that the old type of security was verify once, trust always. Zero trust is trust never, verify always. Right. Something along those lines.
So Barry, talk about cloud, because now, it feels like everything, it's the first place. Years ago, Vivek Kundra talked about cloud first. Now it feels like that is the place. People start with the cloud and then figure out if they cannot, if there's a reason they can't do it. But it changes the cybersecurity paradigm, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Again, the services are not within the perimeter, it's outside. So even if you had a perimeter, you would still have to go over the internet to access the cloud-based resources. So yeah, I think cloud pretty much,
So layer on zero trust with cloud. How do these two things work together? How do they work hand in glove? Are they related? Or are they connected?
Well, they are related and connected, I suppose, because let's see. So cloud-based systems should assume no trust in the remote entity. and should make you go through a rigorous authentication and authorization process before it gives you access.
Yeah.
So that's almost a given, but are most cloud systems doing that today? Probably not. Many of them are still relying on password-based authentication, which is, infamously, it's very weak, I guess. That shouldn't be happening anymore.
People use 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Those people are, I mean, I still see stories of people use password as their password, right? It's not exact. Diana, how does this change? How does Zero Trust change how people are secure in the cloud? Because it's the biggest thing the government's worried about, right?
That's a great question. Give me a moment. It's, again, because Zero Trust is about verifying, validating this identity before you access any resource, whether that resource, regardless of location. So whether the resource is on the company's network or it's a service in the cloud, you still have to go through this authentication, the paradigm for making sure that you are who you say you are and that you really and truly have permission to access that service. The way you're going to access through Zero Trust, it gets to the point where it doesn't matter where the resource is located. So whether it's on the cloud or on the network, the process is going to be the same.
What's the big driver, Diana, behind going towards Zero Trust? Is it this just the number of factors that have changed, the complexity of it nowadays?
Well, it's all of the things that we mentioned. It's the fact that we're working remotely, the fact that all of the assets, before, the assets used to all be located within the company. Honestly, for a long time, the companies ran their own web servers. They had their own email servers. They did everything in-house. And so they could create, they basically had this perimeter. They could create these firewalls that they had to go through before you could get into the network. And plus, most people worked on premises. So you could have a little bit of security. The internet introduced these places where, okay, we have to create holes within the firewall because they have to get out to the internet, and we're now doing business through the internet. And that has just, that trend of moving from everything being inside the company's control to hardly anything being within the company network and within the company's control has just, that trend has been happening for many years. It has just exploded in the last few years.
Yeah.
And because of that explosion, and then on top of it, we've had COVID, which has in a lot of ways even accelerated it more than it was before. And as a result, this need for, again, bringing security closer to the actual resources, regardless of location, has become paramount.
Sarbari, I know historically, one of the biggest problems for you guys, for people who believe in cybersecurity, is cybersecurity tends to be, oh yeah, we need to do cyber, and people want to patch it on at the end, right? It's almost an afterthought. Does Zero Trust help with just get that mentality and bring this more to the forefront how does this help in terms of making sure you're not doing this as, oh yeah, we need to?
I don't know that it really helps or hinders it. I mean, by the way, I think all of us should believe in cybersecurity, not just people in Electrosoft, right? So Chris,
you guys are leading. You guys leading the charge, and I know sometimes, I'm sure you get clients who come to you and go, "Oh, forgot. Can you make this secure?"
we've been around for a long time. In the early days, I mean, we used to have to convince people of cybersecurity, perhaps, but not really, not anymore. I mean, everybody knows what a huge threat this is, Yeah. And so I don't think we need to train people on why cybersecurity is important anymore. But coming back to zero trust, I mean, it's just another way of looking at the cybersecurity challenges we have. I don't think it really changes the fundamental problems. It's just another way to solve them, perhaps, that we had not quite implemented before. I mean, it's still a relatively new concept.
So are these, I see some marketing materials out there, and it sounds almost like zero trust is a technology. But I'm hearing you say it's not necessarily a technology, maybe a suite of technologies, maybe things that encompass technologies may encompass zero trust, but this is really a paradigm, a concept, more than anything else, right?
Can I take that one?
Yeah, go.
Okay. Zero trust is a concept. It's a paradigm. It's an architecture. And to go back to your last question, one of the things that's being pushed a lot within the federal space and the private sector is this idea of DevSecOps, where you've got security built in and addressed throughout the life cycle of a system, of a product, et cetera. The zero trust architecture works hand in hand beautifully with this idea of DevSecOps. And this is something that has been, I hear people talking about DevSecOps all the time. And every time I hear them talking DevSecOps, I think, well, you should be talking zero trust also, because zero trust is an architecture that will very much help a company to ensure that their DevSecOps processes incorporate security at every stage and do it in a way that allow for flexibility. Because one of the things about zero trust is that the user authentication happens in a dynamic way. It's strictly enforced once the access is allowed, but the authentication is very dynamic. So zero trust is, in my mind, it's the wave of the future. It's where we're going. It's where we have to go in order to keep up with the technologies that are out there. But as far as technologies for zero trust, a lot of the things that we have right now can be moved over to a zero trust paradigm, a zero trust architecture. It's just a different way of implementing and a different way of thinking.
So I'm listening to you guys talk about this, and I'm imagining that old, the V8 commercial. Of course, why wouldn't I do this? What are some of the challenges to actually implementing this zero trust framework? Dan, I'll start with you and then go to Sarbari.
I think the biggest challenge is figuring out where to start, especially when you're dealing with legacy systems. You can't, it's kind of, you can't eat the apple all in one bite. It's too big. You have to take it in chunks. You have to, number one, you have to really understand your network and your business needs, all of the business flows. Who are the users? Who are your clients? What are the things that are the most important? What are the processes that are the most important? What are your assets that are the most important for keeping secure? You have to have that map, that understanding, before you can then cherry pick, okay, this is our plan. And you do it in phases. You don't try and do it all at once, because let's face it, we still need to do business. We can't just stop everything, revamp the whole network, and then, okay, we're done, now we can start again. No, that's way too expensive. Now, of course, if you're starting from scratch, you have a green field, then yeah, nothing's stopping you from starting automatically with zero trust. But most of us are not dealing with that kind of paradigm. So while you can potentially try and tackle this by yourself. It's easier to have somebody who understands this area, who can help lead you to the understanding of your network, that whole analysis, and then moving forward to find the best model, because there are several different potential models and hybrid models for how to implement zero trust, depending on your business's needs, depending on what your assets are. So there is no one size fits all. It would be really nice if there was, but we're all different. All of our businesses are different. Our business needs are different. And so your end result, your actual architecture, is going to end up being different.
So Barry, how far along are federal agencies in dealing with this? Are they behind? Are they catching up? Or where do they stand in terms of dealing with zero trust?
I think Diana would probably have a little more in-depth answer to that, but based on what I've been seeing, most agencies are very early, if at all, in their consideration of zero trust architectures. So, I mean, a couple of our customers, we've been looking at zero trust concepts and architectures for them, but they're far from implementation. We're still in the in the conception stage, rather, trying to figure out, how to prioritize the transition, how to manage the change, all of the things that Diana just mentioned in her last segment.
Yeah, and Diana, address that also, and also a little bit about, as you're out talking to agencies, how do they react when, because I hear a lot of DevSecOps people talking about that. They must look at this. Is it an easy sell? Is it a hard sell? Do they get the concept?
They get the concept, but it is, as Sarbari said, right now it's in the very early stages, and in a lot of cases, it's not quite on their radar. Now, something happened just recently. Just in August, NIST published a zero trust architecture guideline document that outlines, it basically provides federal agencies with a blueprint for implementing zero trust. And I don't know if you know, but NIST is the standards organization that the federal agencies look to for what they're supposed to be doing. So the fact that NIST has now published it's the special publication 800-207, which is their zero trust architecture. Now that NIST has published this, I think we're going to see more and more federal agencies have this on their radar and start incorporating this in their architectures, in their strategic planning, et cetera, et cetera. But again,
it becomes a lot more real once NIST has it's the Bible out on it, right? That has all the ins and outs.
Yeah, exactly.
And our people must react in a positive. It seems generally, if this makes the world so confusing out there, right? If this helps them focus and gives them tools on how to deal with this in a better way, that seems like a win-win to me, right?
It seems that way to me. To me, of course, that it's a no-brainer. I am completely sold on the concept of zero trust. Again, I think people just get a little overwhelmed when they think about changing what they're doing right now. And part of having somebody to help guide you through the process is being able to look at things that you already do that with just a few tweaks would fit in with the zero trust paradigm. And the biggest issue, and again, with federal agencies, this is very true, is dealing with legacy systems, dealing with systems where that security has been patched on as an afterthought, because let's face it, the security didn't exist in some cases when the systems were created, which kind of gives you an idea of how old some of these systems are.
As you're trying to modernize your systems, is it even able to roll this? Some of them are so old that you can't. like rolling any new concept is really, can be really challenging, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
so that's the thing to, again, that needs to be looked at and figure out, okay, how can we get as close to zero trust as possible? And what can we do to mitigate any risks that are involved? Because let's face it, there is no magic silver bullet. I wish there were, but there isn't.
Well,
And
no, man, and it keeps evolving and changing. And just when you think, okay,
absolutely.
we got it, and then it changes, and you have to keep adjusting
Right.
it more, right?
But the more we can do to slow down the bad actors, and that includes bad actors from inside as well as outside,
Right.
because something to keep in mind is that, you know, insider threats are probably 30 to 40% of the attacks that businesses experience. So zero trust helps with the insider threat as well as the external malicious actor.
Let me
But
start. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, but it's again, it's not a silver bullet, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
And one of the tools that you have access to that helps you do the better job of this. Let me start
Exactly.
to wrap this up and ask both of you, and I'm going to start with you, Diana, and then bring Sarbari in here. Leave people, we've covered a whole bunch in our time together. If you could plant one seed in their brain, one thought, I'm giving you the ability to just put something in their heads. What do you hope they take away?
The deperimeterization of your business, of the network, is not going away. You are not going to be able to bring this back and close Pandora's box again. Pandora's box has been opened. It is out there. Bottom line, you're going to have to deal with it sooner or later. And the sooner you do it, the better it's going to be for yourself, for all of your employees, for all of your network assets, and for your customers. So
The toothpaste ain't going back in that tube, is it?
yeah, no, exactly.
And I think sometimes what I hear, and I think there's less of this today, but sometimes people say, "Oh, I'm going to wait until people get it all figured out, and then I'll roll out that." And guess what? We're all learning as we go along, and the people who haven't done that end up being either further behind. So it really puts you at a disadvantage. Sarbari, wrap us all up. Tie a big bow around this gift that you're giving to folks, and give them a final thought.
Big gift. So cybersecurity is a journey, and we are here to help federal agencies and other organizations as they go through this journey. Zero trust is one amongst many, many, innovative ways to look at different problems within cybersecurity. It's not the first or the last one that's going to come along. So the big bow that I could wrap it up with is that, Electrosoft, we're really good at helping agencies and organizations secure their networks and their systems. And so if we can be of any help as agencies go through this journey and embrace zero trust, we would be very happy to be a partner to them and help them along the journey. And based on our experience, I think we'd be able to do a really good job with that.
Even Dorothy went down. She had 3 other friends as she walked down that yellow brick road, right? It might as well take somebody who knows the path and has been there and done that. That's Sarbari Gupta. She is the Chief Executive Officer for Electrosoft. And Diana Proud-Madruga. She is a Electrosoft's Senior Security Analyst. Thank you guys both for doing this. And thank you guys for being here for Electrosoft's Thought Leadership Podcast, our second in our series. Thanks to Sarbari and Diana for such a great conversation and a lot of great information there. If you'd like more information about this podcast or Electrosoft services, their array of offerings, you can send an email to info@electrosoft-inc.com. And stay tuned. The Electrosoft's next in the series podcast and special virtual events on Zero Trust. It'll be coming up very soon, and you can get all the information. You can register and find out all you need to know, electrosoft-inc.com. With that, thanks so much for being here. I'm Christopher Dorbeck. Have a good day.